Welcome back to Arsenalen, the Swedish Tankmuseum. It's only a week ago when the Swedish government announced that they will donate the remaining fleet of these APC 302 to Ukraine. A vehicle not very well known outside of Sweden, so let's take a closer look. This vehicle was meant to replace the temporary solution that Sweden had in the early 1960s, an APC based on the old Panzer 38T, a Czech design from the Second World War. And they had done studies late 1950s, early 1960s, and had a list of demands. And the army was quite open to different options as long as these demands could be fulfilled. One option was in fact the American M113, which they looked at, but they realized that if we're going to fulfill the demands, we have to do a major rebuild, and that will cost a lot of money. So the decision was to make an own design and build it in-house in Sweden, and this is the result. Hägglund's vehicle in Örnsköldsvik got the contract, and they started back then, in the early 1960s, 65 years ago, with this. Today they build the CV90, the best fighting vehicle in the world. In early 1962, Hägglunds had 2 prototypes ready for tests, and at the same time, the Swedish Army borrowed one American M113 from the US Army to use as a test vehicle. And in fact, we still have that vehicle in the collection, and it's an early version, so I believe it's quite unique in the world since it's been here since 1962 and has not been upgraded. Still running condition, a bit filthy, but we can run it. If you compare this vehicle to the M113, there's a lot of similarities, but also a lot of differences. In this vehicle, the engine is flipped to the side, and it's underneath the crew compartment, which is above the engine. So in this vehicle you have 3 crew members, the commander, the driver and the gunner, all 3 facing forward with a very good visibility and possibility to observe the battlefield, and that is quite unique. To the left side, there's the turret with a 20mm automatic gun. They took that from the fighter aircraft Tunnan J-29 and turned it upside down and put it in here, and it actually works very well. Driver in the middle and commander to the side. The commander is also a part of the squad at the back. So when he's riding in the vehicle, he is the commander of the vehicle, or perhaps the platoon commander. And when they dismount, he is also the platoon commander for the crew on the ground, and these carry on independently supporting the squad. If you compare this vehicle to the American M113, this vehicle has doors instead of the ramp, and that was a result that they realized that the ramp is a lot slower to open and close, even if it got benefits. But these doors you can open very quickly and swing them open for the crew to dismount, and that takes only a second. And then when you are outside of the vehicle, you can, as the last crew member, you can just slam the door and it's now closed. So you can very quickly dismount, close the door, and the vehicle is ready for going on its own. Also, when you are closing the door, a lot quicker than rising the ramp. So that was why they chose this one. And that's the same reason for the CV90 that also has a door in the Swedish Army and not the ramp. On the roof there are 2 hydraulic operated hatches for the squad to stand up and using the vehicle as a pillbox. So you can drive the vehicle slowly through the battlefield, and you can have 3 or 4 soldiers on each side fighting from the vehicle. And using these guys as eyes, you can also spot aircrafts, helicopters, just observation. So there were a lot of benefits with these hatches, and they were very useful and also popular since they are operated from the commander at the front. The delivery began in 1966, and in total almost 650 vehicles were made of the APC. In some different versions there were command vehicles, artillery observation vehicles, but the majority was this ordinary transport version. It became the backbone of the Swedish mechanized infantry, used all over Sweden in every type of mechanized battalion and the tank battalions. It became also very popular among the crews. They were easy to use, easy to maintain, even if it had its quirks. And as a crew member, as a driver, you needed to actually do the maintenance every day, every week, every month. You had to open the hatches at the front to do the adjustments and to check the steering. If you didn't do that, you could ruin this vehicle in no time. So you needed to be a skilled crew member to be able to keep it going. It's quite easy to learn how to drive, but there are a few things that you need to be aware of in order to keep it running for a long time. The engine based in the bottom of the rear vehicle is a Volvo 6-cylinder diesel engine, turbocharged, a manual 8-speed gearbox, just as in an ordinary lorry from that period, and at the front it's a clutch and brake steering system, which is for a vehicle like this quite common, but you need to know how to use it in order to keep it alive for a long time. Lightweight, it could swim, and when it swims in the water, it's propelled by the tracks. And when the upper part of the tracks goes forward, you have a flow of water coming this way. And that goes up here and reverses out through this little hatch. So the water comes and goes backwards, and that also helps providing the propellant of the vehicle forward. Normally you should have swim screens on the sides in order to keep the water on the inside, but they were mostly removed in order to get access to the tracks for maintenance, etc. A very popular vehicle. In 1993, a Swedish UN battalion was sent to Bosnia in order to make peace, and they had 3 companies equipped with APCs like this, together with a company of Leopard 1s that came from Denmark. This battalion was led by the famous commander Ulf Henriksson, who got the nickname the Sheriff in Vares. And these vehicles, they were absolutely crucial for the survival of the Swedish UN troops in Bosnia and later in Kosovo. From the beginning, they were just like this, ordinary vehicles painted in white with UN markings. When they were sent down, they had on the inside a liner to be protective for shrapnel if they were hit and it got through. And on site in Bosnia, they were later equipped with an outside ceramic layer for better protection, which they also used later on in Kosovo. And the crews loved the vehicles. They became the home for them from many miles, and they drove hundreds of kilometers each vehicle. A lot of maintenance to keep them running, but they did the task, and they really was a success down there. They had a few accidents with anti-tank missiles that hit them, 83 Saggers, that got through the vehicles, no major damage. They could repair them quite quickly, and they was on the wheels again soon after. They also got hit by mines, and of course there were a few casualties, but if they wouldn't have had these vehicles, there would have been a lot more casualties among the soldiers. The 20mm gun is mounted a bit to the side in the turret in order to have space for the gunner. And if you're firing an automatic gun and the gun is mounted on the side, the turret will rotate because of the firing recoil. So it will actually turn in that direction. So inside the turret there is a small device turning the turret back again each round. So it actually fires on the same spot, and that's a quite genius, a little device on the inside that helps a lot for the gunner. It was, from the beginning, it was belt loaded, but that was a bit complicated to maintain the belt. So later on it was rebuilt, so now it's loaded with 30 round magazines that you hook on with armor piercing or high explosives, depending on what kind of target you are aiming at. In the mid-1990s, these vehicles were gradually being replaced by the CV90 in some of the armored brigades. And they were gradually put to other tasks. And in the late 1990s and the early 2000s, the major reductions of the Swedish army did that. They had loads of these vehicles that they wouldn't have any need for anymore, so they started to scrap them. But someone decided, hey, wait a minute, not scrap all of them. So they saved about 200 of them that were kept in storage, and they have been in storage for approximately 20 years. And these vehicles, they will now be restored, put into action again, and being donated to Ukraine. The same turret as mounted here was also exported to Switzerland, where they used it on their M113, but at the rear of the vehicle instead of at the front. This vehicle was, at the beginning, when it came in the early 1960s, quite modern. It could swim, it had good visibility, it had transport capacity for a complete squad, and it also had spaced armor. So it actually has 2 layers of armor, one outer layer, and then it's air and another plate on the inside. And that was something that made this vehicle a lot better protected at the time in the 1960s than most of other vehicles that were common during this period. So it was in fact not that bad back then, but that was 65 years ago. And now let's see what's happened with them, where they're going to be in the future. If you would like to know some more about these vehicles, we have in fact 2 different in detail films about this vehicle, and also one where you can see how it's to drive it. So click on the YouTube channel, subscribe, and this is the APC.